Well, welcome everybody to this World Satsanga on the 28th of March 2020, and I'd like to thank Kevin for doing his continued work. He's doing some fantastic work with his YouTube show that's called, they call them channelers. So it's interesting to see those different types and different levels of ability and different levels of what they think they can do versus what they can actually do. So it's brilliant. It's not just showing individuals who are really good channelers, it's showing the whole spectrum of what you can consider to be high level versus low level. So Kevin's doing a fantastic job there. And just to let you know that we've changed the whole agenda as a result of the things that are happening on the worldwide arena right now. So the agenda that we had for March will now be pushed on to April, provided things are going in the way I feel that they will go. So we need to just put those questions to one side, although the questions we're having for March we'll use now, but in terms of the meditation and the lecture that I had in mind for March, that'll go into April now. So what I plan to do now is that I'm going to go through the questions as announced, but first of all I'm going to give a lecture as to what's going on in the world, what my understanding is, and then we'll go through questions, and then at the end we'll go through a way in which we can help ourselves become a higher frequency and then drastically reduce the chances of succumbing to this new particular sometimes aggressive, sometimes completely benign virus that's flying around the world right now. Well, it's really quite interesting because there's a couple of questions that actually lead into this particular talk, and I'll do those questions first because it makes sense to do so. This is from somebody who's remained anonymous, and the three questions here. I think the third question we can put to the end because that'll be part of the meditation we do at the end of this particular presentation. But here we go. First one was: there are so many chaoses happening recently, such as a big fire in Australia, the plague of locusts in Africa, the upgraded danger of possibility of military conflict in Iran due to the assassination of the Iranian general, and the coronavirus epidemic outbreak in China. Why do these chaoses happening so intensively at the beginning of 2020 worldwide? Are there any more good things which are going to happen in the future, or how can we prepare ourselves spiritually for our ordinary life for the more turbulent world to come? And the last part of it is how can we better use the psychic shield to protect ourselves against the virus. So what we're going to do is to put the psychic shield at the end, so to speak, because although I'm not going to do a particularly psychic shield, I can describe what people can do for their psychic shields if they've bought the psychic shield. And but I'm going to go through a different sort of meditations that allow us to become more, shall we say, less sticky, so to speak, for the virus to stick to. Okay, so that question is quite interesting. And there's also another question by somebody else who goes into a similar sort of thing, right at the very end, about the law of manifestation, and this is in the context of people who die from coronavirus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that question because it's a bit more focused on something to do with prearranged or pre-organised planning for our incarnation as part of our life plan. So we'll deal with that later. But so what is really happening? I mean, across the world, we've had conflict, significant conflict. We've had governmental incompetence from our leaders in various different locations. We've had floods. We've had drought, we've had fire. I mean, floods all around the UK and northern Europe, severe weather systems. The fires in Australia have been the worst, I think, on record. We've had this massive cloud, or should we say, swarm of locusts that have gone through Africa and destroyed the crops in lots of different areas within the African landmass. And then we've got the coronavirus, which is proving to be. Although it's a derivative of, you could think of it in terms of this, it's a derivative of what we call probably SARS or the common cold, or even influenza, or even pneumonia. All these things are quite linked up together because the way in which the human body has been responding is showing similar symptoms to things like the flu virus or pneumonia or a severe cold, but they are working in a different way. It seems to be that it's targeting, or is very, very very quickly able to target weaknesses within the human body, and those weaknesses are being taken advantage of by this particular virus. So you could almost say it's a smart virus, or a very cunning virus. But on top of that, we've got the potential for famine as well, with everybody panicking about needing to, get supplies into the house, like fruit and vegetables, canned produce, sanitary products, bread, meat, and other things such as fuels. We're placing ourselves, we're putting ourselves into a famine-based potential situation. At the end of the day, if we don't panic, because there's always going to be somebody who's allowed to go to a shop or a supermarket to get the vital essentials that we need to exist, then there'll be enough for everybody. So we're putting ourselves in a famine-based situation. And if you look at it all, you've got flood, drought, fire, plague of locusts, pestilence, which is corona, and famine. You've got everything there which has been specified in the Bible and other religious texts that have happened in the past, because we haven't been looking at how we're dealing with ourselves around the world, how we're managing ourselves. As I said, again, we've got governmental incompetence, not just in the UK or in the States, but we've had it in some of the African countries as well. People hanging on to power too long, thinking they can do what they want to do, thinking of themselves rather than the general populace. It's the general populace who's put them there to govern them, but obviously they've reneged on that particular agreement. So what we're getting now is the Earth fighting back. We're getting the Earth's weather system changing for a number of different reasons. One of them is that the Earth's moved on its axis a couple of degrees, which is normal, but there are weather system changes associated with that. We've also got the potential for the pole shift happening quite soon, and the pole shift is a natural phenomenon that's been observed by scientists, and there's evidence to prove that. And certainly in Yellowstone Park, there's areas where there's been minor earthquakes with minor lava flows, and as a result of that, they've managed to measure the magnetic field around certain parts of the Earth, that area, and you can see that over a period of about 12.5 to 13,000 years, things change, and the magnetic poles of these areas of Earth have changed from north to south to north. So that's going to affect us as well, and it'll affect the weather. My understanding is that we're coming out of a minor ice age anyway, so you've got weather changes associated with the change in temperature, and that's a result of the changes in the Earth's the mantle moving around potentially and becoming the next change in the pole shift. And then we've got the change in the axis of the Earth anyway, which is putting some parts of the Earth, the poles, closer to, or one of the poles at least, closer to the sun. So you've got all this weather system change as well, which is causing all sorts of stuff. So you've got lots of things happening concurrently. But at the end of the day, all of these things are happening because of one thing: mankind not being mature enough to govern itself properly with the level of power that it's being given right now. So so everything that's happening, which is all those fires, droughts, floods, plagues of locusts, the coronavirus, and the potential famine that we'll put ourselves into if we're not careful, are basically there to wake us up. Go back a whole bunch of thousands of years and you've got similar things happening with other civilizations. Certainly it was seen in Egypt, and it was definitely seen in Atlantis, and it was definitely seen in the Sumerian period before then, and it was seen in other civilizations before the Sumerian period. So all of these things are warning signs. They're warning signs for us to pay attention to, that says that, we think we're in control, but we're not. And if we're not in control of ourselves, then other forces will come along that will cause us to have a reboot, a restart. In computer speak, we call it a Control-Alt-Delete to start again. So we are being given lots of different warning signs that we're potentially putting ourselves in a position of, I'm not going to say extinction, but a complete change again. The sort of change that happened instantaneously at the end of the Atlantean period, and instantaneously created because of the different entities that are looking after and ruling and governing the Earth in in its individualised free will opportunity to create the Egyptian society and other smaller societies around it. So the entities are looking at us who, we work with these entities when we disincarnate normally. And the whole point of being on Earth right now is that we can see how our individualised free will can benefit us and how it can accelerate our evolution. But right now, individualised free will is causing nothing but self-centeredness, objective materialism, and don't care lessness. That's not very good English, is it? But at the end of the day, all of these thought processes, all these states of being, all of these different ways in which we interact with others are causing us to be completely immature, drop away from the frequencies we were. When we went through a fantastic stage just after the 60s and 70s, where we were starting to understand that there was more to existence than the material worth. We were, the war, the Second World War made a big difference, and the Korean War made a big difference. So we were starting to come out of this sort of almost medieval thinking process, and then right up until about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were looking very good. Everything was becoming transparent. People were working together in a more objective, collective way, and then all of a sudden it became, a couple of leaders came into power, and it became very very personally, couldn't care less as long as I'm okay sort of mentality. And those individuals who are lower frequency, backfill people, for instance, and therefore lower intelligence or lower levels of evolutionary content, latch onto this and everything drops down very, very quickly. So this idea of, my thoughts and feelings were that we were going to come out the other side, and I still think we will. Are only going to come out the other side now as a result of this virus. So all the other things are happening. Fire's bringing us together. Droughts bringing us together. Floods are bringing us together. The locusts are bringing us together because we've lost crops. The coronavirus is bringing us together, working together on a global basis, because the others were only localised. And the famines, the localised famines, will also cause us to work together, because we're going to realise if we don't behave ourselves, then nobody will have anything. Not just the few who manage to rape and pillage the shelves of local supermarkets, etc. So all of this is going to make us think about how we interact with ourselves and others. And we will come out the other side, but we need to start acting in a reasonable and responsible way. Now, certain governments have got ideas about how we can work with this particular virus, for instance, and that we should isolate ourselves until it passes by. Well, these are good ideas and bad ideas. Because at the end of the day, the governments aren't understanding what happens with those individuals who get over it. People are saying they've got it, but there's no checks to see if they have got it. They could have a standard severe cold or a mild flu condition. So nobody knows really properly how many people have actually really got it, whether when they get over it they can still pass it on. And we know that from the Chinese that the people who have got over it can in fact get reinfected. So we know it's morphing. So there's not the right level of research in the right areas. From what I can see, I'm fairly sure that's happening somewhere, but it's not being espoused in the media to identify what the morphology or genealogy or whatever it is of this virus is doing. So we need to understand that, can people who've had it pass it on still? With people think it's the same as a cold, where if you got a cold you can pass it on whilst you've got the cold, and then when you finish the cold you can't pass it on. But maybe you can pass it on. So maybe the whole point of it is that really we need to get over it and then move on. But right now they're thinking of creating what they call a herd immunity, which means that we all isolate ourselves and it burns out, which is one other way of doing it. But if you look across history, things like bubonic plague, I can't remember the actual figures now, but it must be something like between 50% of the world actually died through bubonic plague, from what I can remember. It was a good number. I'll have to just quickly check. Yeah, they were saying over the period of time that the bubonic plague was flying around the Earth in the 14th century, around 60% of the Earth's population were succumb to it. I mean, the average is around 45%, because they're saying between 30 and 60%, because there wasn't any real way of recording it properly, because other people died of other things, not particularly the plague as well. So, but it was all attributed to the plague. So if we don't do it properly, we could end up being in a similar situation. But again, it looks to me as if what it's doing is it's looking for the weaknesses in people's either genealogy, or whether people have lost their immunity, or the immuno response that they have in the body naturally, because they're either old or frail, for instance, or they have underlying things. So be vigilant, but be high frequency, because this is another way in which we're being told we're doing it wrong. We're managing ourselves wrong. We're interacting with each other wrong. We're damaging our environment, and so we're being told to stop, think, behave, and act correctly, nurture ourselves, nurture the earth, and start to think of ourselves as a world population rather than little populations on different islands or continents or land masses. So think of it in terms of we've been given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5 warnings, and we're about to get a 6th. That we need to behave ourselves, become more mature, reject ineffective management of ourselves, become more mature in how we interact with each other, become more caring and loving in how we interact with each other, and become more caring and loving in how we interact with our environment and those other things within the flora and fauna within our environment. Okay, so that's what's going on. We've been given a big warning, a number of different warnings, and we need to sit up and pay attention. It's not an end of the world notice, although it could be if we don't behave ourselves. And I feel we will do. I feel we're going to change. If you think about a number of different satsangas we've had, where some people have asked different questions, one of the answers I've given is the only way we get together, and one of the ways we do get together, is when we're all in a crisis. And one of those ways when we work together well is in war, for instance, or plague. And right now we're in a plague situation, so we're at war with a particular virus. So that's the only time we start to work together properly, when we're all threatened. When we're at war globally, we're all threatened, locally and from a country base as well. When we've got a problem with the environment, we have to work together. If it's a serious condition, if we have a problem with our health because there's something flying around, some virus or condition that's flying around which is reducing our population dramatically or drastically, or showing the potential to do so, we need to work together. So we're all being told to work together and to reject our petty requirements, our desire to have material wealth, status, being better than somebody else, and being selfish. We need to reject all of this and start again. Okay, so a little bit of a rant, but that's what I've been picking up, and we really do need to sit up and take notice, because we really have had a number of different warnings, and we're about to have another warning as well. And when they have the famine warning, they're coming along, and you can see it, things are going to start to fall apart, because although we might even go into some forms of military rule, so to speak, to try and keep things in perspective, at the end of the day, people not being able to feed themselves is one of the biggest issue we might have. That it'll end up being above and beyond that issue we've got with this virus. Okay, so the questions then. The first 3 questions were linked into this, which is quite nicely, and the very last one we'll go into it as well, as part of how we can protect ourselves. So in between them, we've got the normal questions, fantastically, and it's actually good to have a little bit of let's calm down and see what's going on in the bigger picture. And JM has given some wonderful questions from reading some of the Beyond the Source books, and I thank JM for this. It's a nice thing to settle back into when there's all worldwide concern, panic, and feeling of not being able to do anything about anything. Okay, so first question's from SE5 in Beyond the Source 2. It says no one entity will be tied to the source entity that created it. They will all be free from the ties of the original environment. They'll be equals with the source entities and the origin, all within the origin. The comment is, this seems so far off that I can't conceive of it actually happening. Does this reading teach that I or my test will be equal to the origin? Indeed, that every test will be. How can this be? Well, this is commenting on the end of the first big group of evolutionary cycles that we'll go through, that allows the origin to go from this current area of polysentient area of sentient self-awareness, the first group of 12 levels of structure, into the second group of 12 levels of structure, where everybody's tests, if they are part of a source entity, and that source entity feels that test has been of service in the right ways, and I don't see any test that won't be, to be honest, because every test is evolving through the use of its aspects and shards. Then they will be that next set of that second set of 12 levels of structure will be so massively vast in comparison to the first set of 12 that there'll need to be many entities that are of source entity level to be able to map it out and help the origin become more than it is. And in doing so, the statement about will be all equal to the origin is sort of true. It's not quite true, but it's sort of true, because we'll be able to be closer to the origin as we become bigger entities. As a result of our own evolution, we can gain and our true energetic selves gain source entity status. We become more than we were, significantly more than we were, and therefore our evolutionary content has the capability of becoming much more than it was. So we start to become a larger evolutionary sentient being, and or should I say entity. Let me get my nomenclature right. And as a result of that, we become much bigger than we are. So we become more like the origin because we are closer to the origin, because we've got to different levels of status. So that this is like so far out into a different event space that it is almost inconceivable to be able to understand it and recognise it's going to happen. But it will happen, and it has happened if you think about it. Even if you look at event space, in being everything happening concurrently. So it's just a matter of understanding what it will go to. And the book, the Beyond the Origin, I am feeling, and a little bit about the that I'm writing now, will discuss some of this and help us to understand a bit more about the further projection of the origin structure, and what that means to us in terms of what's going to happen later. So when the book Beyond the Origin comes out, we'll be able to start to understand a bit more about that particular statement that J.M. has commented upon. Very good statement. It will happen, and actually, as we move through our evolutionary cycles get faster and faster and faster. So although it seems a long way away, actually the more evolutionary cycles we do, the faster those evolutionary cycles happen, the faster it happens. And so it's not as far away as one would think. It's just that we think of it in terms of human terms in a linear way, and it seems to be a long way away. Okay, so the next one, number 2, from TC, the drop-in base frequencies of the Earth over the last 6 years leading up to a knife edge change at the start of 2016. So I would like to hear more about this knife edge change in 2016 and its ongoing effects with us. I don't recall anything special doing in 2016 except for my own heart attack. Was there anything more special in 2016 other than any other year? What's happened is basically, is it 6 years? Is it 4 years ago? Wow. Yeah, up until around 2016, we were looking good, and it sort of started to drop off, and it was so subtle. It's almost like falling asleep very gently in front of a fire. So you start to go down the frequencies and you don't notice it. So what's happened is that we've gone from moving into a very high frequency condition to becoming complacent. And again, this thing about the world being in the complete set of chaos it is now is because we've become complacent. We've rather than manage ourselves and become have more of the observer self amongst us all, and collectively, we've let things go, thinking that we're okay. And when we let things go, free radicals come in, such as incompetent leaders and the ability to allow things we wouldn't allow to happen, so to speak. I mean, something simple like throwing sweep wrappers out of a car window, with some of the things that people wouldn't normally do, but they do now because it's okay to do so, because I feel it's okay. Basically, we haven't gone through a knife edge per se, but we've gone through a rapid descent, and a rapid descent that is going to bottom out round about, I'm being told now, September time. So when we start to work together properly as a result of this virus, and we do work together properly, we'll start to behave and think and act in a different way, in a higher frequency way, and then we'll drop out the other side. But the knife edge didn't actually happen per se. It ended up being a rapid deceleration, but a deceleration that was so subtle that we didn't see it. Okay, so that's what happened there. Next one from TC. Now is the time for further expansion, and this further expansion will harden you for the work that you're destined to do during the dialogues to come. 2 new yet to be started books will test you to your limits. So you have been sufficiently hardened to support your work you're doing now, or do you need to be more hardened? So basically this is to do with me becoming more capable of speaking the truth, basically. And identifying that sometimes we may need to catch something to stop something, such as this. This is going to be probably a very unpopular statement, that sometimes you have to catch it to stop it. If you create a firewall through people becoming immune through catching something and then getting over it and then being able to continue because they've had it, then that stops something going past them, for instance. So we have to work out: are we better off by containing ourselves and trying to stop the progress of a virus by doing social distancing and self-isolation, or we're better off just catching it and getting on with it? That would be an interesting computer algorithm to create, to find out whether we're better off just catching it and getting on with it, and unfortunately suffering the damage, the damage of certain individuals who aren't well, or who aren't genetically disposed to positively reacting against the virus, leaving their incarnation. Or do we self-isolate and not be immune to it, but just hope it burns out because there's nobody to pass it on? Interesting computer modelling there, I feel. But in terms of me, it's more against me being able to cope with higher and higher frequencies, and become more and more capable of coping with wider and wider subjects and deeper analysis of those subjects. It basically becoming more and more able to be expansive. And so the book I'm working on now, which is called The Uncreated Creations, is one of those that's going to stretch me, I know that, and certainly beyond the origin will do as well. Okay, so that's what's going to happen there. Number 4, do we readers need to be hardened to process your latest book? Feels that way to me. That's to do with the curators. My advice is just read it and don't try to understand it. Once you've read it, give it a couple of weeks, just leave it somewhere gathering dust, and then read it again when you feel the intuition to do so, and then you'll find that the information that's in there will have pervaded you, and you'll start to understand it in a better way. So again, it's allowing you to have the key to becoming more expansive. So read it all if you can do, put it down, but read it and just read it like a story. Put it down, let it pervade through you, and then when you feel the urge, read it again, and you'll find you'll understand much more. Okay, good. Next question, number 5 from TC. It says, "You're getting old. I find this and the assertion that you, Mr. Om, have to experience all the limitations of incarnate existence, every one of them. to be oddly comforting, as one tends to think of you as above all that. The only way to experience lower frequencies is to be incarnate, and the only way to experience incarnation properly is to experience everything everybody else does. The only individual who I understand who decided to walk away from that and still be here was Babaji. Even Yogananda said that you're here and you experience everything that everybody else does. If you were here and you were somebody who was completely outside of everything, completely outside, you would appear to be godlike, and you'd be able to manifest things from nothing. You'd be able to cure illnesses. You'd be able to create technologies. You'd be able to manipulate world financial systems. It would be unbalanced totally, and it wouldn't allow the individual who was incarnate to be able to experience the incarnation in lower frequencies in the way you're supposed to experience it. So that's what I'm experiencing. I have to experience it in a balanced way. I have to experience everything in a balanced way, and I've noticed certainly now that I am experiencing things in a balanced way. That which is yin is now yang. That which was yang is now yin with me. I'm experiencing everything in the way that I'm supposed to, in a very balanced way. And the only way I can do that is to be in the environment of duality, and the physical universe is that environment of duality. So it's a good question, thank you. Next question is from the Source Entity. Your frequency level has been elevated as a result of these dialogues, but the speed of elevation has been rapid, not at the same speed as you would normally be experiencing, even with the ascension being close as it is. Well, we went through the ascension before 2012, but the ascension wasn't a group ascension. So I'll just kind of continue this part. It says, I assume that close can be hundreds of generations in the future rather than actually close. Do I concur? Well, basically, we could have been very close to the ascension in terms of what we call this mass ascension as a result of a critical mass being available. But my understanding is critical mass being available doesn't happen and didn't happen because we ascend individually. Now, when we start to ascend individually to the point that there's enough of us at a certain level, then we create a number of different triangulation functions, either directly or from a volume-based triangulation perspective, or an area-based triangulation perspective. And then we start to accelerate how others also ascend the frequencies as well. So they get affected. So as we ascend the frequencies individually, and we go into a different frequential environment, and maybe choose to help those who are in a lower frequential environment, we affect those others as well. So it wouldn't be like all of a sudden everybody else is enlightened or self-aware because they've gone from the third frequency to the fourth frequency. It's a fact that people start to move up to that level in a faster and faster way. So we go from ones and twos to tens to twenties to hundreds, moving up, and so it becomes a logarithmic curve rather than a knife edge change upwards. Okay. So right now, though, that potential has been pushed right back. Previously, I was seeing over 50 years away, but it's certainly over 100 years away, and that's if we stay where we are now, and we come out the other side. We need to do some drastic changes in our attitudes, and our thoughts, behaviours, and actions to come back to where we could have been. Question 7. In TC, the TC, by the way, means the curators. Source Entity 1 says, from the perspective of mankind's understanding, all types of flora and fauna can be used for incarnate experience. And James says, in all my spiritual readings, I have never come across the notion of mankind incarnating in flora. Do we incarnate in plants? Well, no, we don't. We have the potential to, but we don't. So from the perspective of mankind's understanding, all types of flora and fauna can be used for incarnate experience, but we can't. But if we did, we wouldn't benefit from it. It's simply because of our evolutionary level. Though humans can incarnate into animals, or they can incarnate into animals, they can incarnate into plants, they can incarnate into minerals, they can incarnate into larger gaseous areas within the physical universe. But it doesn't benefit them because those vehicles that we'd incarnate into have dramatically lower levels of ability and evolutionary opportunity. We are so highly advanced in comparison to those who are animals, for instance, those souls, those true energetic souls are animals, that it doesn't benefit us. So we can incarnate into these different vehicle types, but we don't, because it doesn't benefit us. Whereas an animal soul could also incarnate into the animal vehicles or bodies, and the plants and the minerals, and some gaseous objects in the rest of the physical universe. But they don't, because it doesn't benefit them. But they can't go into a human body because it's too high an evolutionary step for them. So they need to work for a long time before they become a different evolutionary level that allows them to go into the lowest condition within the human stage of evolution. So an entity of a certain evolutionary level that normally uses a certain vehicle to incarnate into can incarnate into that and that which is below. But it can't incarnate into that which is above, because it requires an evolutionary jump. Okay, but they don't generally. Well, they don't basically. Although it does happen, rare, very rare occasions, go incarnate into something which is lower than where they are because it doesn't benefit them. There's no evolutionary benefit from that. Okay. Next question, question 8. This is an expression of my experiences absorbing your writing. As I'm slowly getting into the curators, I find that at times well beyond my. I find it at times well beyond my comprehension. I'm like a 5-year-old struggling to grasp calculus. I find this oddly comforting and familiar, and I realise that I've felt this way before when first reading others of your books. That'll be probably the History of God, Beyond the Source 1, 2, and The Origin Speaks, and probably even the End Dialogues. The notion that I must read and reread to fully absorb that what you're bringing makes your latest work seem like a chest full of treasures that will only slowly open up to my understanding. Thank you always for all you put into these works and for patiently bringing your perspective to humanity. Well, thank you for reading it, and thank those other individuals who took the time to buy the books and read them. And sometimes people buy the books and they stay in their cupboards or on their bookshelves for 3 or 4 years before they actually feel the desire to read them. I know a number of individuals like JM who've read them multiple times, and I know other individuals who've bought them and haven't read them for 2 or 3 years, and then they read them and it comes to them. They read the first couple of pages and they can't get into it. It stays on the bookshelf, and all of a sudden the time is right and they devour it. It's all to do with timing and expansivity, but it's, if we weren't being stretched, we wouldn't be evolving. So the opportunity to bring more and more detail to individuals, to highlight and illuminate the greater reality in a much more coherent and comprehensive way, is an absolute joy. And it's one that, when I'm writing the on book now, it's a wonder, absolute delight to be able to do it. When I was doing the healing book, I knew what I got to do, and it was a set framework in my mind, and it was like writing a novel where you know every part of every chapter of every scene of every scenario. Whereas this is, I don't know what's going to happen next, and that's the joy of writing the books that are basically channeled information, is that you don't know where you're going to go next. And when I actually read the books myself, if I go back, for instance, and look at a couple of pages to understand somebody's question from one of the books, I'll read it and I think, wow. So I also think, wow, that was an amazing piece of work. But I understand it, of course, because it's come through me. But to read it again and look at it, I think this is unbelievably, deep information, and how wonderfully honoured I am to be able to, broadcast this information by being the channel for it. So I am totally awed and totally in honour of being of service in this way. So for those of you who thank me, thank the source and thank the origin for allowing this minute individual, irrespective of what his sentient origin is supposed to be, for being able to do this in this particular environment with all the limitations of this particular vehicle as well. Thank you. It's namaste, because namaste is a deeper level of thanks. So thank you all. Last question from BA. What is the correct law of manifestation? If we start manifesting external things for ourselves, aren't we accruing more karma? If we manifest something because we need it to be able to exist, that is and by manifestation I mean you sit and meditate and you visualize what you need. You do it morning and night. You sort of do it in the morning when you get up, and you do it at night before you go to bed, and you have no doubt that it's going to happen. It will happen. So if you're manifesting it because it's a requirement, if it's some part of your life plan, you feel you must have it or must need it to be able to move forwards, then there's no karma associated with it. If you're just trying to manifest something for being greedy, and we can manifest something to overcome karma as well, by the way. I mean, what, if you think about it, if those of you who read the autobiography of Yogi, there's a part in there where Babaji is working with Lahiri Mahashaya again, and he's having to overcome a couple of different pieces of karma so that he can become instantaneously self-aware and recognise Babaji as being an entity he's worked with in previous incarnations. And so he manifests this huge opulent palace around him, because in the previous life Lahiri Mahashaya became absorbed by material wealth and opulence, and he materialised this opulent palace around him and said, "What do you think of this, Lahiri? You know, this is what you desired in your previous life." And Lahiri Mahashaya said, "Well, it looks okay, but I don't really feel don't feel drawn to it." And Babaji was delighted, and I think he did a little dance, from what I can remember in the book, and he demanifested the palace, and he said, "That's it. You've overcome that piece of karma now. Now you can become self-aware, because you're now purified." And then Babaji performed something, and Lahiri Mahashaya started to remember who Babaji was and became capable of performing the spiritual or metaphysical feats that he could do later. So this whole part of manifesting is sometimes we manifest things to experience things and then get over it. So for instance, you can manifest the need to have certain belongings. Then once you've got them, if you no longer desire them because you've got them, then it's gone, isn't it? That particular karmic link is gone. So the whole point of manifestation is to achieve two things. One is there's some form of materialistic karmic link that you need to dissolve by simply owning something, then realising that you don't need it. I.e., it doesn't own you, it doesn't control your thought processes. Or do you need to manifest something to survive? Now those are two different things. So one is karmic and one's not karmic. Well, one removes karma or can remove karma, versus one is providing the ability to survive in this particular low frequency environment. So just be careful of how you're manifesting. What is the reason for your manifestation? Is it to experience something and then move on, or is it to help assist you in your way of navigating to your incarnation in terms of providing for you? You know, things like providing food or shelter, those sorts of things. And the last part is to do with, again, this virus. He said, and the question is, this is in context of people who died due to coronavirus. So did they decide to die due to this virus before incarnating here? In that case, was coronavirus already in our life path, or did this happen due to decreasing frequency of our planet? Destiny versus collective manifestation. Maybe, for instance. We choose our exit point before we leave this incarnation, generally. I would suggest 99.99 recurring to the 12th significant figure of people leave this incarnation as a result of the way they've chosen. Some of those will have chosen this virus to go. So some people disappear at 21 or 35, and some of them they're 83. So those people who appear to be very fit and healthy, but genetically predisposed to not being able to fight the virus, will go, because that's the way they've chosen. So you could argue that some of these people who are going now are going as a result of the way that they've chosen to lead this incarnation as part of their life plan. Whereas others have chosen to experience it and get over it. Others have chosen to live in fear of being exposed and hide away from it. So the whole point of it is if we live in fear of it, then we become lower frequency. And this leads me into the meditation we're going to have, because one of the ways in which we can remove or delete our ability to succumb to the more severe effects of this virus is to raise our frequencies. Now, a number of individuals I've worked with have told that they can use the chakra opening exercises to raise our frequency, and that is without doubt one of the ways of doing it. If you're opening your chakras and rotating them clockwise, you pull energy in, you raise your quantum level, you raise your frequency to a level which is above the gross physical level, and that means that you're less sticky, you're less physical, and therefore the virus can't attach to you. So if we want to live in fear, we will become more sticky. If we live without fear, because we understand a higher level of understanding, we're coming from a different level, a different plane of understanding, understanding the greater reality in a different way, or the way that the local reality works with the greater reality, then we don't live in fear, and so we don't become, what's the word for it, lower frequency enough for the virus to stick to us. So we don't become sticky, we become more Teflon. So the whole point of it is, if you can use the chakra opening exercises, and I'll make sure that the links to them are on the transcript that wonderful lady US is going to do for us at the end of this particular satsanga, and I'll put it on the emails that I send out to those devotees who receive the emails, and I'll also put it on the blog and the website, so people can download the chakra opening exercises and can assist themselves in doing so, and so they can raise their own frequencies and become a higher frequency. But what I want to do now is do a different way of doing it. Okay, I want to create a condition where we can move ourselves out of a fear-based environment, a lower frequency environment, and raise our frequencies into a more understanding environment. And being a higher frequency, those things that are of the physical can't stick to us. If you think about it this way. If we have ice, and I've used this example a number of times, if we have ice as being physicality, gross physicality, and then we give it energy, we raise its frequency, it becomes water. Then if we have that water and we raise its frequency again, it becomes a gas, steam. If we raise its frequency again, it becomes very diffuse, almost diffuse to the point of non-existence. Okay, so if we have ice on the table and we put something on it, like for instance a cup, the cup stays on the ice, and if the ice is cold enough, the cup will stick to the ice. For instance, it's like when we go into a cold environment, a very cold environment, say minus 40 degrees C, and we put our hands on a metal rail. Our hands will stick to the ice because it's lower frequency, and the skin sticks to it. The molecules cold weld basically to our together, so our hand would stick to it. And this is what happens to the human body. If the cup in this example, or the hands in the example being in a cold environment, is placed on the ice or the metal railing at minus 40, it sticks to it. So the virus will stick to a lower frequency. Whereas if we're at a higher frequency, like water for instance, then the hands will pass through water. We get resistance, but it passes through it. But it's still there, and the cup would still sit in a dish or a saucepan full of water. If we increase the frequency and the water becomes a higher frequency, or the ambient temperature becomes higher, we don't get stuck, do we? We don't get stuck in the railing with our fingers, and the cup no longer sits in a pool of water, but it sits in a pool of air. But the air moves around the cup because what was ice became water that became air, and even more diffuse air if we give it more energy, moves around it. The cup cannot sit on that which is not there anymore. It's a higher frequency. So what we need to do is make ourselves a higher frequency, so we do two things. We make ourselves less dense, which stops the virus from sticking to us, because it can't stick to us if we're a high frequency. Yeah, the cup in the air versus the cup on the ice, or the hand in the air versus the hand on railing at -40. Okay, versus just being on those low frequency environments, such as the ice or the railing. So it won't stick to us. So, and that does another function. It brings us into a higher state of understanding. The higher the frequency that we are, the more we start to become calmer and collected, because we start to understand, by becoming more expansive, and we start to tap into higher frequencies, and we start to understand the bigger picture, or the greater reality, in more detail. We start to understand who and what we are. We start to understand that this particular incarnation is just a moment in our experience. And so as a result of that, we move beyond being in the first three frequencies of the physical universe. And even though we might still appear to be physical, we will be less physical enough for the virus to stick to us. So for instance, the water would drip off the cup. So the minimum we want to try and do in this meditation is to make ourselves at least like water, or hopefully like steam at least. Okay, so let's meditate. Let's put ourselves in our straight backed chair. Okay, feet flat on the ground, back straight, hands palm uppermost on our upper thighs, neck straight as well, closed eyes, gently focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is not in the, although it's in the same position as the spiritual or third eye chakra, it's not the same thing. They coexist in the same space, but they're different. And that origin is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. Those of you who've done the chakra opening exercise, you can use that to move yourself up to the 7th frequency level if you wish. You can use the visual, or you can use the visualization process, or you can use the spoken words. What we're going to use here is a spoken word, so that everybody can do it. Okay. So in your mind's voice, or you can speak out aloud, repeat these words. I extend and rotate clockwise all of my chakras. And that means that all of your chakras, the vertically opposed chakras of the root chakra and the crown chakra, and the horizontally opposed chakras of the front aspect and rear aspects of the sacral, solar, heart, throat and spiritual or third eye chakras, all extend and rotate clockwise and pull energy in, raising our quantum level up to the 7th frequency level, whilst also having an anchor point here, by the way. So see yourself, if you wish, going from being the block of ice, that which is you at the 3rd frequency level, slowly melting, going to the 4th frequency level, becoming a puddle of water, the 5th frequency level, to evaporating, the 6th frequency level, and then becoming very diffuse on the 7th frequency level. If you want to use your psychic shield, create your psychic shield, those of you who've subscribed to it, but also create an extra level of programming by telling it that you are totally invisible to this particular virus that's causing us worldwide trouble right now, this COVID-19 virus, in fact any viruses. Your shield makes you invisible to it. It passes through you and comes out the other side. It doesn't stick to you. With those of us who have opened our chakras, this is the same thing. Those little spheres, the little nodules that surround it, which is why it's called corona, can't stick to us. Visualize these little virus-sized spheres with little trumpet-shaped nodules coming towards you and passing straight through you. It's totally unable to attach to you. On the 7th frequency level, or if you've used your psychic shield and programmed it to make you invisible and so diffuse that your body is totally permeable, the virus cannot attach to you. You are totally diffuse. At the 7th frequency level, there is nothing that exists on the first 3 levels that can touch you, that can stick to you, that can be part of you. At this 7th level, you're closer only a short level of closeness, but you're still closer to your true energetic self than you normally are. So your communicative ability increases. Your level of knowingness, your expansivity, your awareness increases. You know more about who and what you are. And so your fear dissipates as well. If you want to, you can use a switch. Visualize a switch in front of you that turns fear on or off. Turn that switch off, or use your mentally spoken words to say, I turn my fear switch off. And in doing so, you don't fear. You don't fear anything. You certainly don't fear this virus. If you have no fear of the virus, your frequency stays high. Naturally high. And if your frequency is high, it can't attach to you, because there's nothing for it to attach to. It's like the cup trying to sit on the ice that has had its frequency increased to make it into water, so it's thawed out and become water, and then it's dissolved because it's a higher frequency, becoming probably steam, and then more diffuse as it becomes, as the atoms get further and further away through having higher and higher frequency, it becomes totally diffuse. So the gaps in between the atoms are vastly greater than the size of an individual coronavirus or any other virus. So on this 7th level, you're so diffuse that there's no way in which this virus can attach itself to you. Your physical form is too slippery. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anyway. It's all part of your creativity that creates it, that allows you to be here to experience low frequency existence. and the thoughts, behaviours and actions associated with it. But it's time to recognise that you are simply here on a temporary basis to help accelerate your evolution by experience physicality in the way that physicality is supposed to be experienced. But it doesn't mean you have to engage with all the physicality. So staying and keeping your frequency high is a way of avoiding any form of virus, including COVID-19, from attaching itself to you. Just know that your frequency is so high that everything passes through you. Nothing can stick to you, nothing can take hold, nothing can affect your biology. Your biology is a much higher frequency. Let's just stay here in this high frequency state for a moment. Let you know how it feels. Just feel that you're impervious to everything. Still follow the rules of your government because we have to show conformance, but know that you're safe. Your higher frequency condition, you do this first thing in the morning when you get out of bed, you wake up, last thing before you go to bed. Know that you are a higher frequency and as such intangible. You are intangible to any virus, including this COVID-19 virus. Feel your lightness. Feel your dissolution. Your diffuseness. Feel your nothingness. See everything passing through you. Nothing sticks, nothing stays. Nothing can stay because nothing is there. We'll just stay here for a couple more minutes. Just feel the lightness that is you. You're as lighter than a feather. You're beyond the feather. Okay. So just ask your chakras to stop their rotation and contract back into their points of origin, so that you come down to this level, knowing that you're already high. You're staying high for the next 12 hours, so to speak. So you can use these words. I stop the rotation of my chakras, of all my chakras. I stop the rotation of all of my chakras, and I contract all of my chakras to their points of origins, and you come back down to the earth level, the zero level. But know that you still retain this level of higher frequenciness, this non-stickness. So slowly come back into the room, slowly open your eyes. If you've got some water, drink the water to help ground you, and know that you are somebody who's going to live outside of fear, be more expansive, understand more of the greater reality, but more importantly, you're a higher frequency, and therefore the virus can't stick to you. As I said, still stay within the conformancy of the advice from your local governments, but know that you're okay. Even though you may still need to isolate, for instance, or stay isolated, or go into social distancing, just know that you're okay. Just keep your frequencies high, and this virus will not touch you. Okay, well, we've come to the end of this Satsanga, and again, thank you for listening to it. A couple of the workshops have been put on hold. Certainly the Chinese workshop's been put on hold. They were supposed to happen in May, so the one that was supposed to happen in May at Slovenia, that's been put on hold. Slovenia is very close to north of Italy. The next workshop was supposed to be in Irvine, on the west coast of the States. That's still planned to happen. I think that by the time we get to July, things will have calmed down a lot, and flights will be back up and running back to the States, and people will be able to go back into the States. But we'll have a contingency plan anyway. We can always move it back a little bit if we need to. But right now it's still happening. Look on the website, www.beyondthesource.org. Look for the events tab and scroll down to the workshops, and you'll see all the details about the Irvine workshop there, and the links to the Eventbrite page to buy your tickets or reserve your tickets as well. Okay, I'm going to, whilst I was doing this, I was getting a lot of I wouldn't say persuasion, but a lot of information to suggest that I'm going to help people for the next 2 months. I'm going to reduce the price of the Psychic Shield, because all you need to do with the Psychic Shield is do it, and then tell it to provide you with additional protection for the virus, so that the shield also protects you from the virus as well, and it will do so. So I'm going to reduce it down to £1. I'll have to keep something on there to keep the system working. So I'm going to reduce it down to £1 for 2 months from the start of the Satsanga, which is so from the 28th of March up until the 28th of May. I'm going to reduce it down to £1 so people can buy it very easily. And also people can buy it for other people as well. Okay, so we'll do that. I'm going to reduce it down to £1 so people can use it very simply. It's very affordable, and I'll leave it on there for the next 2 months so people can use it and share it with others. Okay, thank you for listening again. Thank you for being high frequency. Thank you for understanding the bigger picture and listening to me advise that this is basically one of a number of different ways we're being told to behave ourselves and look after our environment and each other and stop being selfish. Use our individualised free will in a more, shall we say, collaborative and higher frequency way. So keep safe, keep high frequency, and look forward to working with you in April's Satsanga. Namaste to you all. Did you see the aliens in Crete?